Long ago, before the reign of the Olympians and their lofty thrones, there existed a Titan shrouded in mystery and fear. His name was scarcely whispered among mortals, for it was believed that even speaking it could summon twisted visions. When the war between Titans and Olympians drew to a cataclysmic close, he was among those cast into eternal punishment. Unlike his brethren who found themselves chained beneath the earth or condemned to watch over the skies, he was banished to a labyrinth of nightmares. Within its endless corridors where reality bent like hot metal, he remained forgotten, except by those who understood the danger of the illusions he could forge in his chains. He did not recall the precise moment he arrived in that place. He remembered only the searing light of Zeus's thunderbolt, the roar of the battle that ended Titan rule, and the haunting stillness that followed. When he opened his eyes, everything had changed. The corridor where he stood glowed with an unsettling haze. The walls were made of colossal stones, carved with symbols that seemed to writhe and shift in the wavering torchlight. That was when he first sensed it. The labyrinth had a living presence, whispering thoughts in the hollows of his mind, stirring up shapes and forms he alone could see. A single meandering passage stretched before him, leading to an ill-defined gloom. The Titan knew that to remain still was to surrender. He had once stood beside Cronus in war. Fear was not unknown to him, but he had wielded courage, even in the face of defeat. Now, stepping forward, he felt the labyrinth breathe in time with his footsteps, as though waiting to test whether he deserved to leave. Or perhaps it was mocking him, toying with him as a mortal cat plays with a trembling mouse. He walked for hours, perhaps days, without respite. His mind became disoriented by the winding passages that doubled back and contradicted themselves. His hands would trace the walls, trying to keep some semblance of a map in his head, but the route refused to be pinned down. Sometimes, after making what he believed to be a correct series of turns, he would return to the same corridor. The runes on the walls leered at him, constantly shifting, daring him to decipher them. Eventually, he grew tired of the labyrinth's mocking ways. Anger simmered beneath his exhaustion. Gathering himself, he unleashed a roar that reverberated through the stone hallways. Cracks ran like lightning across the floor, and the subterranean vault trembled. In that moment, the labyrinth twisted the sound of his wrath back at him, a torrent of echoes that came swirling down the corridor, forming illusions so vivid that even a Titan felt horror creeping along his spine. From the swirling darkness emerged figures he recognized. They took shapes from memories he had tried to bury. His fellow Titans turned to dust and scattered by divine thunder. Allies rendered powerless by the cunning of the Olympians. His pride undone in an instant. By forging illusions of these memories so potently real, the labyrinth sought to break him. But the Titan clenched his jaw, refusing to concede. He realized in that moment that illusions were his to wield as much as they were a weapon against him. Long ago, he had discovered a unique gift, the ability to conjure illusions out of the ambient energies of fear and longing. But this skill had always been overshadowed by the might of his kin. When Cronus brandished his scythe, rending the sky with unstoppable force, lesser powers paled. Compared to controlling time and nature, illusions seemed trivial. Yet illusions could inspire madness, unravel armies from within, or embolden them with false hope. In the labyrinth, illusions might carve an escape route where reality refused him. He tried tentatively at first, focusing on a faint memory of an olive grove. Nothing appeared in the corridor. The labyrinth, it seemed, resisted his illusions. His frustrations grew. The Titan began chanting words in the ancient language the Titans had shared, a language older than the mortal ear could endure. Runes along the walls glimmered, as if awakened to the echo of a heritage not heard since the age of primordial chaos. As the Titan continued to chant, an illusion began to form. A shimmering outline of a doorway flickered in front of him. He envisioned sunlight streaming through, warm and unrelenting. He pictured the sweet perfume of green hills, the chirping of birds overhead. For a second, he could almost step through, but the labyrinth's own illusions bled into his creation, twisting the illusions into labyrinthine shapes. Instead of a beckoning exit, the Titan was suddenly staring into a mirror-like surface that reflected endless corridors upon corridors, each showing him in a slightly different shape, sometimes monstrous, sometimes stooped with age, sometimes wearing a bleak expression of despair. Shaken but not broken, the Titan realized that he needed to outsmart the maze that imprisoned him. The labyrinth was not mere stone. It had a consciousness, formed from the nightmares of those trapped inside. Its illusions merged with his, threatening to devour him whenever he tried to shape a path. Knowing this, he decided to proceed carefully. He would not attempt to fight the labyrinth with sheer brute force. He would approach stealthily, forging illusions small enough to slip past the awareness that filled these walls. Continuing onward, he followed the weaving corridors deeper into the gloom. His footsteps echoed like a heartbeat in the silence. Every so often, the labyrinth conjured illusions of flickering torches to lure him down dead ends, or summon the wails of imprisoned creatures meant to twist his empathy. The Titan had learned to be wary of illusions that were too obvious, for they were traps laid for his hope. Instead, he paused often to close his eyes and sense the subtle shifts in the air places where the labyrinth's illusions thinned, where the veil between reality and deception was slightly frayed. Through these slight cracks, he inserted slivers of his own illusions, like daggers prying open a rusted lock. He might picture a faint glimmer of light on the wall, barely perceptible. In melding his illusions with those of the labyrinth, he masked his presence and intention. Bit by bit, he learned to shape pathways that appeared real enough to fool the watchful spirit of the maze. One day, as he ventured along a corridor lined with arches covered in elaborate vines, he encountered something startling. A figure stood in the distance, candlelight flickering across her features. Though the labyrinth had shown him countless illusions, something about this presence felt disturbingly tangible. Cautious, he edged closer, hearing the soft rustle of cloth and the gentle, rhythmic tapping of her staff on the floor. The glow of the candle revealed a face carved by sorrow and ancient wisdom. A woman who held the air of a priestess or oracle, hair braided with silver threads. She spoke in a voice reminiscent of wind across a deserted plain. "You are not alone here. The labyrinth draws many, some mortal, some divine, others beyond such definition." The Titan narrowed his eyes. He could not decipher whether this was another trick. "Who are you?" "I was once an oracle, devoted to Hecate and her knowledge of hidden realms," she said. "But my devotion led me here, after I refused to remain silent about the truths I'd witnessed. The labyrinth claimed me, feeding on my nightmares and regrets." She paused, her gaze distant. "Perhaps we can help each other?" Skeptical but intrigued, the Titan asked, "What is it you hope to gain?" "A release from these corridors," she answered simply. "But I cannot manage it alone. My gift for prophecy is twisted by the labyrinth's illusions, and I cannot see the way out. Yet you, with your Titan blood and your power, might lead us free." He pondered her words. Allies were few in this place, and illusions abounded. But if she was telling the truth, her gift of prophecy could counterbalance the illusions. "Shall I trust you?" She closed her eyes, holding her candle aloft. "You have but my words, which may mean little, yet I can share the glimpses of what I see." She took a shaky breath, then began to speak images as though reading from unseen scrolls. She spoke of a corridor bathed in azure flame, where a statue of a forgotten Titan stood. Beyond it, a gateway carved with swirling serpents promised release. She described a key, intangible and glowing, hidden in the illusions themselves, something to be forged from the labyrinth's own energy combined with a Titan's power. He watched her closely as she described what he had only guessed. Illusions could become tangible if shaped properly. Neither mortal nor god understood illusions as intimately as he did. If she had gleaned that, then perhaps she spoke with honesty. For now, he would not dismiss her. "Very well," he said. "I will use my illusions, and you will guide me using your sight. But betray me, and I'll shatter your illusions so thoroughly that you'll never know truth from dream again." The woman did not flinch from his threat. She only dipped her head in acknowledgement. Thus began their uneasy pact, an alliance of convenience between a Titan and an oracle who had glimpsed forbidden knowledge. Under her guidance, they made their way to the corridor she had seen in her visions. Each time the labyrinth tried to deceive them, the oracle would close her eyes and murmur a chant to Hecate. The illusions would waver like ripples in disturbed water. In those seconds, the Titan would step in with his own illusions, manipulating the faint lights and shadows until they formed doorways or blank passages, preventing the labyrinth from pushing them away from their path. Eventually, they reached a massive chamber lit with an otherworldly glow. The corridor opened into a vast domed hall, the ceiling carved with ancient constellations in swirling relief. At the center stood a colossal statue, chipped and blackened, depicting a Titan wearing a stern expression. Great wings extended behind his shoulders. Although they appeared bound by chains carved into the stone, at its feet an azure flame burned without fuel, illuminating the statue's face in dancing patterns of light. "This is it," the oracle whispered, her eyes reflecting blue fire. "The Titan of unforgiving horizon, if I recall. He was known to roam the edges of existence, but here he is, petrified." A warning, perhaps. The Titans sensed a kinship in the statue, as if both had been condemned for their role in the Titanomachy. In the silent flickering of that azure flame, he felt a resonance with his illusions. He approached and extended a hand over the dancing blue light. It pulsed and seemed to cling to his palm, both warm and unnaturally cold. The labyrinth swirled in agitation around them, its walls groaning with protest. From behind him, the oracle murmured instructions about the intangible key. "You must gather the labyrinth's own illusions in the flame, blending your power with it. If the labyrinth is alive with illusions, then this flame is the heart of that living magic." The Titan closed his eyes, focusing his mind on the labyrinth as he had never done before. He felt the labyrinth's energy coursing around him like a living tide. Every horrifying vision, every twisted corridor, was part of this living entity. Drawing upon it, he attempted to weave illusions of his own into the flame. There, he created shapes, letters of the ancient Titan tongue, small geometric patterns, the outlines of labyrinthine corridors condensed into symbols. The azure fire responded, swirling with bright loops and lines, forging a shape out of smoke-like substance. "Focus," the oracle urged, her voice betraying her growing excitement. "You must not let the labyrinth distract you." A wave of visions crashed into the Titan's mind. He saw Cronus devouring his children to forestall prophecy. He saw the cunning of Rhea saving Zeus, raising him in secret. He saw the final battle, swirling with thunderous power as Titans fell one by one. Each memory threatened to shatter his resolve, for it reminded him of his defeat, his shame, and his exile. Yet he pressed on, forcing the illusions to bend to his will. As sweat gathered on his brow, he shaped those haunting scenes into a single glowing key of pure energy. It hung there in midair, shimmering with the labyrinth's azure glow. Just as the key began to solidify, the labyrinth unleashed a final defense. The entire hall went dark as the azure flame sputtered. A cacophony of snarls and shrieks filled the air. From the darkness, shapes lunged forward, beasts formed of black smoke, with red, unblinking eyes and gaping maws. They circled the Titan and the oracle, ready to tear them apart at the labyrinth's command. The oracle's candle flickered, its light barely holding off the darkness. "We must protect the key," she cried. Drawing a deep breath, the Titan raised one hand. Channeling his illusions outward, in the space above them, he conjured a dome of shifting light, weaving illusions so thick they formed a barrier. He crafted an image of a roaring lion whose cosmic mane lashed at the smoky beasts, confusing them, fracturing their sense of reality. Meanwhile, the oracle spoke more incantations, her words turning the candlelight into slender, darting shadows that slashed through the oncoming horrors. Within this chaos, the Titan felt his hold on the key waver. The illusions that formed it needed constant focus. But if he diverted all his energies, the labyrinth's beasts would overwhelm them. Summoning every ounce of will, he reached deep inside and found that fury he had once used on the battlefield. The memory of being forced to watch his siblings fall pushed him forward. He poured that emotion into his illusions, forging an entire legion of ghostly titans, each brandishing luminous weapons. They clashed with the smoky beasts in a surreal war of phantasms and nightmares, their thunderous shouts echoing through the chamber. While the illusions kept the beasts at bay, he stabilized the glowing key. Slowly, carefully, he merged the swirling patterns in the azure flame with his Titan magic. The key sparkled brilliantly, like a piece of the night sky had condensed into mortal shape. He reached forward and grasped it, half expecting it to burn him. Instead, the key felt almost weightless. In that instant, the illusions collapsed. The legion of titans vanished from the chamber, and the swirling darkness receded as though the labyrinth's guardians had pulled back in sudden fear. The light in the chamber returned, flickering uncertainly. The Titan turned to the oracle, who looked awestruck. "It is done," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Now, where is the gateway this key can open?" She closed her eyes, letting the candlelight dance across her eyelids. "It lies deeper in the labyrinth, behind a threshold carved with serpents. But the corridor changes. We must follow the door that never stands still." So they ventured on, relying on her insights to dodge illusions that tried to mislead them. Whenever a serpentine carving appeared, it would abruptly vanish or shift into something else. Once they nearly stepped through a door with snakes carved in marble, only for the oracle to shake her head in alarm. "The labyrinth is trying to trick us," she said. "The door is false." Another time they came upon a hallway inlaid with serpents twined along the floor. But the shapes upon touching them flaked away like dried leaves. The labyrinth's illusions grew increasingly cunning, weaving their senses into knots. They were chased by abrupt illusions of collapsing ceilings, nearly took a wrong turn down a passage that ended in a gaping chasm of swirling night, and faced illusions that mimicked the oracle's own voice. Yet each time her prophecy and the Titan's illusions guided them away from doom. Finally they emerged before a stone archway, under which serpents were carved in twisting, elaborate coil. Their scales seemed to shift in the dim light, and each serpent's eye was an embedded shard of gleaming obsidian. Cautiously, the Titan approached, brandishing the intangible key. The serpents, as if sensing his approach, began to move along the stone, their carved bodies twisting to watch him. Shadows deepened within the archway, revealing a sealed door. The oracle clutched her candle, her knuckles white. "This must be it. I can see the faint outlines of starlight beyond. Hurry!" The Titan raised the key, and an invisible current of energy hummed through the air. The serpents hissed in harmony, their eyes glowing a furious red. The labyrinth trembled one last time, walls groaning as if about to close in and crush them. Mustering his strength, he inserted the glowing key where the snakeheads converged. The action felt surreal, like pushing an unseen object into a watery veil. Light burst forth from the archway, momentarily blinding them with azure brilliance. Then, with a resounding crack, the sealed door parted in a swirl of mist. Cool air rushed in, tinged with starlight and night scents. For the first time in endless ages, the Titan tasted freedom on his tongue. He stepped across the threshold, half expecting to be yanked back, but the labyrinth's illusions faltered and the corridor behind them stilled, as though the living maze had momentarily lost its hold. He and the oracle crossed onto a plateau, under a wide expanse of midnight sky studded with constellations. The hush of open air pressed on his ears, a new sort of silence compared to the labyrinth's stifled corridors. In the distance, faint silhouettes of mountains crowned the horizon, their outlines bathed in moonlight. Behind them, the door shimmered in the air for a brief second before the labyrinth swallowed it entirely, vanishing into the night as if it had never existed. For several moments they stood there, disoriented by the magnitude of the sky overhead. The Titan turned to see the oracle's face streaked with tears. After so long in stone corridors, the wind in her hair was like a benediction. She closed her eyes, as though to imprint every detail of this moment onto her soul. The Titan took a deep breath, his chest rising, feeling something stir within him, relief, pride, and an uncertainty of what lay ahead. They were free from the eternal labyrinth, but were they truly free in the eyes of the Olympians? What wrath might await him if the gods discovered he had escaped his designated imprisonment? Yet he refused to let fear douse this triumph. "What will you do now?" the oracle asked softly, the candle in her hand finally flickering out in the night wind. He looked at her in silence for a moment. "Whatever I choose," he said at last. "For too long I have languished under the illusions of others. I am a Titan, and illusions are my dominion. I will shape my own path, whether the Olympians permit it or not." She nodded, adjusting her cloak against the mountain breeze. They were in many ways outcasts. Hers was the path of a prophet who had delved too deeply into forbidden knowledge. His, the path of a fallen Titan whose illusions could reshape the gods' carefully ordered world. Perhaps, in their mutual exile, they would find a measure of purpose. Then the ground rumbled, a subtle tremor resonating from beneath. The Titan turned, half expecting the labyrinth's illusions to coil around them again. But the plateau remained as it was, summoned starlight shining on the rocky terrain. No illusions sprang forth to ensnare them. The quake subsided, leaving only the hush of a nocturnal world. Yet the Titan could sense the labyrinth's enduring presence, far below, a living entity anchored in nightmares and illusions alike. He realized that though he had escaped the labyrinth's corridors, its essence had followed him. Imprisonment had changed him. He was no longer the Titan he had been. Instead, part of that living maze flowed in his veins, granting him a deeper grasp of illusions, and quite possibly binding him to the labyrinth's fate. A disquieting thought, yet also a source of new power. In forging illusions to break free, he had mingled some of his spirit with the labyrinth's. The illusions he could now craft might surpass anything he once knew. A single star fell across the sky, trailing silver in its wake. The oracle observed it silently, perhaps noticing how the Titan's posture had shifted, how his gaze flickered with a new intensity. After a time, she spoke. "The labyrinth is behind us, but not gone from you. I can see it in your aura." He nodded. "So be it. Let it remain. I will shape it rather than let it shape me." He walked to the edge of the plateau, gazing at the valley below. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps even closer than he imagined, lay the seat of the Olympians, where thunder was rumored to rattle the highest peaks. Memory flickered through his mind, the flash of Zeus's wrath, the agony of being condemned. Yet in his chest, courage flared. For all their power, the Olympians had never fully understood the potential of illusion. They had built their dominion on tangible dominations, lightning and storms, the seas and the earth. But illusions could undo the mightiest fortress from within. The oracle joined him, the folds of her robe rustling as she stood by his side. "Is it wise to challenge them?" she asked, an unease in her voice. "You have seen what they can do." He turned his gaze to her. I do not yearn for another war, he said gravely, Artroy. But I will not live like a hunted beast, nor hide in the corners of the world. When they realize I am free, they may come for me, and if they do, I will be prepared. The oracle looked away, her expression troubled. Then, I shall go where my visions lead me. Perhaps it would be wise for us to part, at least for now. We have escaped the labyrinth, and each new horizon beckons with its own illusion. She made to walk away, but the Titan gently placed a hand on her shoulder, the first gesture of warmth he had given. You have my thanks, he said. I would have never found the key without your insight, and without your illusions I would have remained lost in the maze, she replied. We have fought side by side, and a part of your spirit binds me as well. Reaching into the folds of her robe, she withdrew a small black candle, unlit. Take this, a remnant of my devotion to Hecate. If ever you feel the labyrinth's illusions consuming you from within, light this candle at midnight. Let it guide your spirit. He accepted the candle. Though small, it felt unexpectedly heavy, laden with energies beyond mortal ken. Be safe, he said quietly. She inclined her head in parting, and then stepped away, her silhouette merging with the starlit gloom. The Titan watched her vanish among the rocks, torn by a vague sense of regret. For the briefest of moments, within the labyrinth's terrors, he had found a companion who understood the fine line between reality and illusion. Alone now, he turned once more to the sky. The labyrinth had shaped him, even as he had shaped it. With each breath, he felt an undercurrent of that living maze, an echo that might manifest at any moment to reveal illusions at his beck and call. Where once he had been a Titan overshadowed by Cronus's might, he now stood on the cusp of something new. A fate unwritten, forged by illusions of his own making. With a single thought, he conjured a delicate swirl of light in the air before him, a wisp of an illusion. It took the form of a small bird, a nightingale, glowing faintly in the moonlight. It fluttered its illusory wings, drifted in the unsettling hush. Then, with a wave of his hand, he sent it soaring into the night, a vision of freedom. And so he began walking down from the plateau, launching himself into the unknown, resolved to claim the horizon, whatever illusions or truths awaited him there.